Hi, this is Garibay, and today I'm going to be talking about Mecha Hack, my Battletech one-shot. Okay, so I actually ran a Battletech tabletop role-playing game one-shot, right? Where every single player played a mech pilot, right? So within the Battletech world, it was definitely a successful game. Basically, as soon as we were done, I could tell everybody had a good time. But I got feedback, and the first feedback was, actually, the reason I was having the game was my entire family went to Louisville, Kentucky, to visit some of our in-laws. I had to work, so I stayed behind. So I was kind of just by myself this week. So I used that time to run some tabletop role-playing games for my friends. And so when we were finished, the first question from one of the players was, didn't you say your family's coming back 2 days from now? And I was like, yeah. And they're like, can we play tomorrow? So the one shot turned into a double shot, that's cool, which is great. So immediately the players wanted to play more. I think that's the real indicator that your game is going well. The players are eager to play more. So that worked out great. I was very excited. So let me talk a little bit about it. So first of all, so let me just explain what we actually played. So we played Battletech in the year 3025, which is pre-clan invasions, and it's during the Secession Wars specifically. So there were no clan mechs and no clans. Wolf Dragoons is in the game, but the characters are not in it. All of the player characters are in an independent mercenary unit, which is Smoke Ravens. So that's the name. It's a custom mercenary group that I created. It is led by Farah Hetched. She's their leader. The Smoke Ravens have 3 jump ships, 8 drop ships, and 56 mechs, right? And then they have an assortment of vehicles, okay? Every single player started essentially with 3. We built our characters to level 1, and then because they were part of the and then what I did was I immediately started the game. I introduced them to Farah Hatched. I introduced them to the Smoke Ravens, and I said, "You are all valued members of the Smoke Ravens. You can now level." Right? So this was really effective because all my games are hyper focused at running the game faster, right? So what we did was we brought them in at level 1, had them make their characters, right? But I wanted them to be at higher levels than that, but I didn't do that before we started playing. What I did was I just had them level to level 1, introduced them to Smoke Ravens, and then gave value to the Smoke Ravens, saying, you've been a valued member of Smoke Raven for 6 months, level your character. Now they're level 2, right? I want to talk a little bit about all the players who played, and then about the players who played, and then also talk specifically about what they chose to play. So we're playing Battletech 3025. Battletech is one of the things that's nice about Battletech is Battletech is all humans. There are no aliens in Battletech. Battletech is just human expansion across the known universe, right? And so all the characters are human mech pilots, right? So that makes it a little simpler. So you already know race and class. So it's so what they were really choosing was their mech, right? And I allowed them to choose any mech they wished from the Battletech existing mechs, except clan. And by the way, I didn't even say you can't do clan. What I did was I asked, is anybody excited about running clan? No one was excited about running clan. Only one player at the table actually knew enough about Battletech history to understand deeply about the clan. There was probably two players, right? But and so basically at that point I immediately, just to simplify the history, I set it at 3025, which is just the 5 houses, which is House Marek, House Davion, House Steiner, House Lau, and there's one more in there that I'm not thinking of off the top of my head. But there are 5 houses And House Karita, sorry. So you have all those 5 houses, and of course they don't, the player characters don't belong to any of those houses. They all serve in Smokeraven. Okay, all right. So what did the player characters? So they chose. So what their real choice, right? The players' choice was what mech they were going to run, right? And they could run anything. They could run a light mech. They only get one mech. They could run a light mech, they can run a medium mech, they can run a heavy mech, or they can run an assault mech, right? Now, I just want to say, Mac Click, Absolute Tabletop, did an absolutely amazing job building Mecha Hack, because, in Mecha Hack, you have four specific types of mechs within Mecha Hack, 4 different chassis. You have the Scout, you have the Brawler, you have the Striker, and you have the Titan. And so these mapped exactly to the 4 classes of Battletech, right? So the Scouts, of course, were the light mechs, the Brawlers were the medium mechs, the Strikers were the heavy mechs, and the Titans were the assault mechs. And this mapped absolutely perfectly. It was a thing of beauty. It was really, really nice. The players really liked the pilot types. So you have the 4 pilot types within Mecha Hack. You have the Quipster, you have the Engineer, you have the Commander, and you have the Maverick, right? So let me tell you which mechs they all took. So my Quipster, basically had a Quipster, and he took a Thunderbolt. We had another player take a Belial, which was a light mech. We had another player take an Atlas, which is an assault mech. And then we had another player take a Hunchback, right? And so, no, sorry, not a Hunchback, a Griffin. So you had a Griffin in there, you had a Thunderbolt, you had a Belial, and you had an Atlas, okay? So what we did was, we went through. They rolled all their attributes, very, very simple. The 4 attributes, of course, are mobility, power, systems, and presence, right? They rolled all their attributes. They chose their pilot type, then they chose their mech, and then that determined their chassis type, right? Then what I did was I gave them everything on the I gave them every single thing on the chassis type except the equipment. I took off all the equipment. And then what we did, and so they got all, they got the chassis abilities, all that stuff, right? But the equipment, instead of getting the type of equipment from Mecha Hack, I actually gave them the exact armament from their mech. And we used Sarna.net. We went right to Sarna.net, and it said LRM-10, PPC, SRM-2, blah, 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 right? So it would tell you exactly, and we would just write down each one of those armaments, right, in the module area, and then we kitted each one of those out as equipment. So it was, a heavy melee, light melee, heavy ranged, light ranged, and it was so easy to just snap fit these, right? And then the last thing we did was we actually just went through the modules, and I just screened through them real quick and said, okay, you have this module, missile barrage, you have this module, targeting array, right? And actually, everybody was able to look at their mech and say, hey, I think this is a piece of equipment I have should qualify me for this module, right? Now, we didn't do any kind of point buy or anything. You just took your mech and you got your modules according to how that Battletech mech is actually provisioned. And it worked. It was so fast. We built characters in 45 minutes. The entire game was scheduled for 3 hours, and we ran for 3 hours and 15 minutes, right? And by the way, one of my players showed up an hour and 15 minutes late. So with all that, we built characters. We had an entire cohesive story with flavor. Actually, afterwards, I was kind of proud of this. I got feedback, and one of the players said, I like how you put in all the pillars of Dungeons & Dragons 5e. Interaction, exploration, and combat. And I was like, well, did I get exploration there? And they said, yeah, you did. And then they explained exactly how exploration was in there. And I was like, oh my gosh. and I had hit all three, which is really nice. So it was really cool. And Mecha Hack. Now here's the awesome thing, right? There were different levels. We had one absolute Battletech expert. We had another very, very savvy Battletech player. And both those guys, I'm talking about the video game. They have played the video games extensively, because there are video games for Battletech. And they've played those extensively. And it was really just fun to see how, so we had people at different levels of knowledge about Battletech. One person knew nothing about Battletech. So we were able to bring them all up to speed. We were able to get everybody rolling. It was very, very fast. Now, here's one thing, right? When I was done, I was like, so what do you guys think? Do you think this did a good job of actually mapping to the actual Battletech combat? And they said, it did do we were up and running. We had a lot of fun. There definitely is some complexity loss, in that, like for instance, this mech has 6 armament units and this mech has 3, right? There was a benefit to having those 6, but it wasn't as much of an advantage as if you'd went into the full detail on all of these and done more to be like the Battletech, actual tabletop role-playing game. Well, one thing was really interesting though was, I had this idea about a week and a half ago, and a buddy of mine, he's a really big, one of the players, he's a really big Battletech fan, and he actually said, hey, I've been thinking about running this in Genesis, right? But I would need to build out a whole bunch of stuff. And so I think that is the value of Mecha Hack. You can find other games that will let you run something that you can run with Mecha Hack with more detail. But the reality is, my buddy was thinking about it, and I was already done my first one shot, right? That's the key. Mecha Hack will get you in much faster. Everybody has a lot of fun. One of the things that was really cool is, because I am a Battletech fan, I have a lot of the Battletech WizKids models, so I was able to use those models as miniatures. It was really fantastic. It really, really, really went really well. I'll tell you a little bit more about overall what the story was. So the story overall, essentially, basically, Farrah Hetched is the leader of the Smoke Ravens. All of the players are mercenary mech warrior pilots, serve in Smoke Ravens. And the first thing that happens is essentially, I start them out in a slow. Basically, their jump drives are actually just sitting. All of their jump ships are sitting there, and they're sitting at a hyperpulse generator, which is one of the communication units within Battletech. And Smoke Raven's hackers are intercepting every single message that comes in through the hyperpulse generator, and then deciding if that communication goes out or not. And from this, the Farrah Hetched, the leader of Smoke Raven, gets 2 specific missions that she actually decides to bring to the entire group and let them vote on what mission they should take. So the first mission is called Reft, and Reft is a resupply station, which is an independent resupply station just at the beginning of the periphery, right? And it's been there for a long time. You can get good food there. You can get good armament. Most of the houses respect and do not fight on Reft because it's such a valuable point, right? Well, House Steiner had actually sent 3 lances. A lance is 4 mechs, right? So they had sent 3 lances to overtake Reft, and they had done it. They had overtaken Reft, but they had lost 10 of the 12 mechs they brought in. So they were sending a message out to... So the 2 remaining Steiner mechs were sending a message back to House Steiner saying, okay, we've taken it, but we only have two mechs here. We need reinforcements. Send us reinforcements of 6 lances, and we'll be able to hold Reft. And Reft will be ours, and House Steiner will have this resupply planet, right? Smoke Raven intercepts this, and Farrah Hetched brings us there and says, we could do a million different things with this. We can go in there, with only 2 mechs there, we have 56 mechs, we could just wipe out those last 2 House Steiner mechs, reinforce, keep the planet for ourselves. we can go to any of the houses and say, here's the deal. We'll sell you the information. You just go knock these guys over and keep the planet. Or we can do that same job. Just tell whichever house we want to. You can go take over Reft. Or what you can do is, and in addition to that, you will hire us to do the cleanup work with you to fight and take over those two mechs. And also, maybe do about 2 weeks worth of garrison duty, right? So they would get paid for the information and they would get paid for fighting, right? In addition to that, there was also the issue of Reft is owned by the system settlers, right? So Reft is actually owned like a collective, and there's multiple planets around Reft, and the people who settled that system actually own Reft. So the Smoke Ravens could give it back to the system settlers, right? So Farrah Hetch is like, that's the job, and everybody's like, that sounds fantastic. There's nothing but upside. We just have to pick how we want to make our money. And she said, but here's the problem, right? There's another mission we can go on, which is, oh, and by the way, I apologize. The house that took Reft was not House Steiner. It was House Merrick. Sorry about that. All right. So she said, but the last one is, we found Dran's killer. Okay. So the second mission is, we found Dran's killer. So everybody at the table was like, who's Dran? And I said, well, Dran was a member of the Smoke Ravens. He died 6 months ago. He was special to every single one of you, and every single one of you are going to write on your sheet right now, Dran, parentheses, friend, or Dran, parentheses, rival, right? But regardless of whether he was your rival or your friend, he pushed you to be a better pilot, and he pushed you to be a better person, right? Everybody in Smoke Ravens loved Dran. Now, I just told you that Dran pushed you to be a better person, right? Well, that's not just talk. You can all level, right? So basically, I now took them to level 3, and there's been a little bit of role play, no combat. I brought them in at level 1 and did the full creation of their characters. Then gave them another level because they were part of Smoke Raven, and gave them another level because they had all spent time with Dran. And now they're invested in Dran, and Farrah Hetch says, okay, we found Dran's killer. Dran's killer essentially is a House Steiner officer who basically Dran piloted a Jenner, and basically his Jenner mech who was knocked over, and this House Steiner mech warrior by the name of Thesk came over, and while his Jenner was completely powered down and knocked over, and when he was getting out of the cockpit, Thesk came over and stomped him with his mech's foot and killed him in person, right? Now, among mech warriors, this is that's not cool. You can't do that, right? So everybody in Smoke Ray, so Farrah Hetch is like, here's the deal. We could take Reft, right? And it's all upside. Or we can burn fuel in our jump ships. We can burn fuel in our drop ships. And we can risk 2 or 3 lances of our mechs with no pay and go kill Thesk, because we know where he is. And we just got this message that says he's going to be here at this time, and there's going to be 8 lances. Actually, I'm sorry, there's going to be 8 lances of Steiners there. So we could lose as many as 8 to 16 lances depending on how we fight, right? And that's a ton. That is a ton of their mechs. It's like half the troops' mechs. So one of my players says, I know what we should do. Let's send a message to Steiner that they can come and clean up the mess on Reft. So let's draw Steiner and Thesk to Reft, and then when they get there, we'll let them destroy the Marek, the 2 remaining Marek mechs, and then we will destroy them. And that's exactly what they did. That's exactly what they did, and it was awesome. We had the best time running Mecha Hack, Battletech. I cannot recommend Mecha Hack enough. It is fantastic. It's $6. It's an absolute buy. Check it out. Take care.